How's it going, Rogues Gallery, and welcome to another Flesh and Blood video. Today we have another Flesh and Blood deck tech going over a classic constructed deck, a warrior deck, and my personal current favorite deck, Dorinthea Iron Song. Dorinthea is the very first hero that really clicked with me as a Flesh and Blood player. I think she is currently the hero that I am most best at piloting. So if I went to any like high level tournaments or events, I would very likely bring a deck very similar to the deck we're going to be talking about today, because this is my current Dorinthea list. Warrior is such an interesting class because it really focuses around the weapon, especially Dorinthea, you know, giving your weapon an additional attack or letting your weapon attack an additional time if you can give it go again. But you can kind of pivot that into like a less aggressive, more controlling style or more mid-rangey build, depending on what kind of cards you choose for your build, depending on if your opponent is playing a more like controlling style, or if you think you can just go ham and go completely aggro on them. So yeah, we're gonna talk about the full deck, all 80 cards, and I'm gonna tell you kind of what cards I start out with my build, and then kind of what cards I choose for certain matchups. Before we get started, I do want to give a couple quick shout outs. First of all, if you're looking to pick up Flesh and Blood singles, check out FAB Foundry. Fantastic customer service, fantastic pricing. They support the community, just all around excellent folks. I do have an affiliate link with them in the description down below. If you are from Canada, check out Red Riot Games. Same kind of deal, excellent customer service and shipping from Canada. And if you're looking to pick up Flesh and Blood sealed product, I do have an affiliate link with TCG Player. So if you'd like to pick up stuff from TCG Player, I do have an affiliate link with them as well, also in the description down below, or you can support me directly via Patreon. But without further ado, let's get on with the deck tech. Once again, my personal current favorite deck. I love Dorinthea. I love this warrior deck. It's really sweet. It's one of the decks you do not have to play with the Tunic of Fyendal, though it's quite good in the deck, but you can play with some other stuff. So it's a little bit smidge more budget than some decks, but this is not a budget build. We're going all in. We're going full in. So let's do it.
So let's kick this off by talking about Dorinthea Iron Song herself. One of my absolute favorite Flesh and Blood heroes, tied up there with Viscera currently. She is a warrior hero with a 4 hand size and a 40 starting life total. She has a once per turn effect. When your weapon attack hits, you may attack an additional time with that weapon this turn. You must have an action point to attack an additional time. So we basically need to give our weapon go again in order to attack with it a second time. So we can basically attack twice with our weapon if we can give it go again with Dorinthea Iron Song. And we definitely want to give it go again because her weapon of choice is the Dawn Blade. You can kind of hardly tell. This is a cold foil Dawn Blade. It has a once per turn action for a single resource attack. Does have a base attack of 3, and it says, if Dawn Blade hits, and it's the second time it has hit this turn, put a +1 damage counter on Dawn Blade. Just getting a single counter on this, making that 3 into a 4 is a huge deal. It also says, at the beginning of your end phase, if Dawn Blade did not hit this turn, remove all +1 damage counters from Dawn Blade. So basically, you want to hit twice, and you want to keep swinging. You want to keep hitting as many times as you can, at least once per turn. And so Dawn Blade is a huge part of this deck. Warrior in general as a class tends to focus pretty heavily on weapons, so we have a lot of cards to pump up our Dawn Blade, both as actions and as reactions. So keep all this in mind as we go forward. Let's talk about our equipment setup next, starting off with the Warrior Legendary equipment, the Brave Forge Bracers. These are pretty good. They do have a defense of 2. They have a once per turn action for a single resource. Your next weapon attack this turn gains a +1 attack. Activate this ability only if a weapon you control has a hit this turn. Go again. So this is a good way to give our second weapon attack, you know, a pretty good boost. So, you know, if your opponent is like, yo, I'll take the first attack and then I'll block heavily on the second attack, this card can actually make it so that your second attack is just that much more powerful. It also has Battle Warned, which means you can defend with a card, and when you do, it gets a -1 counter on it. So that's pretty good. You can defend with it multiple times, and it has an ongoing, just fantastic ability. So Brave Force Bracers, really good card for the Dorinthea deck. Next up, we have the Arcanite Skullcap. This is a legendary generic equipment. This is a really solid defensive item, and this is the only headpiece I run in the deck, basically. And this is the only arm piece I run in the deck because I will not be swapping these out. I will be only running these cards. And I do want to mention that this deck is a full 80 card deck list, so there are some sideboarding, swapping options in here. So what does Arcanite Skullcap do? Well, it's, like I said, pretty defensive. It does have a base defense of 1. It says if you have less health than your opponent, Arcanite Skullcap gains +1 defense and Arcane Barrier 3, and it also has Battle Worn. So just having 2 defense and Arcane Barrier 3 and being able to block with this multiple times just makes this an incredibly versatile and just really, really good defensive card. So if you got the Arcanite Skullcap, definitely run the Arcanite Skullcap. Next up, we have our chest options, and here we actually have some pretty interesting options. I personally really like the Courage of Bladehold. So this one is a majestic warrior equipment, so it's a warrior specific one, does have a defense of 2. Action, destroy Courage of Bladehold. Your sword attacks cost 1 resource less this turn, go again. So basically, that gives Dawnblade the ability to attack for free. So if you do have a huge turn where you want to attack multiple times, then it's also spend a lot of other resources, then popping off your Courage of Bladehold is quite good. And then it has Temper, which means you can defend with it the first time, and then it gets a -1 counter on it. And then the second time you defend with it, it gets destroyed. So typically, defend with it once and then pop it for its ability. I really like the Courage of Bladehold. This is the one that I mainline in the deck. But you could also run the classic Fiendal's Spring Tunic. And what this card does is that it basically generates some resources over time. So whereas the Courage of Bladehold is like, boom, all at once, let me get some resources, the Tunic is more like, general, gradual resources over time. So what it says, at the start of your turn, if Fiendal's Spring Tunic has less than 3 energy counters on it, you may put an energy counter on it. As an instant ability, remove 3 energy counters from Fiendal's Spring Tunic, gain a resource. Then it has Blade Break, so whenever you defend with it, it gets destroyed, and it has a defense of 1. You really don't want to be defending with it, but, really late game, if you gotta, then you gotta. And basically, this generates 1 resource every 3 turns, so if it's a really long game, and in Classic Constructed, the games tend to go pretty long, this is a really good option. But like I said, personally, I love the Courage of Bladehold. It's just really good at defending, and it has that, ability to kind of pop off. And also, I only have 1 Spring Tunic, and this one sees play in a lot of my other decks. So if I'm playing with someone else and they're using one of my decks, they can have the Tunic, and then I can have the Courage of Bladehold. Also, Courage is significantly less expensive. So, there's kind of some options here. You can kind of go with either or, but personally, I like the Courage, but Spring Tunic's are really good. And the final piece of equipment I want to talk about for our main deck, or at least what I normally choose to play with, is the Refraction Bolters. This is the common warrior equipment. It has a defense of 1. It says, when your weapon attack hits, you may destroy Refraction Bolters. If you do, that attack gains Go Again. Just a really, really good, consistent way to have Go Again, on board. So on those turns where you really need to give your Dawnblade Go Again, you can always pop off your Refraction Bolters. Also, it has Battle Worn and a defense of 1, so you can defend with it and then pop it later. So yeah, just obviously slam dunk include in the Dorinthea deck. Next up, we're going to talk about some attack actions. We have a ton of ways to pump up our Dawnblade in this deck, but we also have some ways to go a little bit wider to attack multiple times with attack actions. One of them is Enlightened Strike, one of my favorite Flesh and Blood cards of all time. I love this card. It's so versatile, so fantastic. It is a 0-cost card with a defense of 3, an attack of 5, and it says, as an additional cost to play Enlightened Strike, put a card from your hand on the bottom of your deck. So it doesn't have a cost, a pitch cost, but you still have to put a card on the bottom of your deck, which is still pretty good. And it says, choose 1, draw a card, or Enlightened Strike gains +2, so base attack of 7, pretty good. Or it gains Go Again, so you can kind of like set up for multiple attacks in a single turn. A lot of folks would just do 7, just hit you for 7. Dawnblade for 3, hit you for 7. Like, it is pretty good, so I definitely like Enlightened Strike. We do run a full playset of these in the deck. Next up is Ravenous Rebel. Not as flashy as Enlightened Strike, but still quite good. We are running 3 of the red pitch version of Ravenous Rebel. Costs 0, attack of 5, 2 defense, so kind of, not so great to defend with. But it says, reveal the top card of your deck. Ravenous Rebel gains -X attack, where X is the pitch value of the card revealed this way. Pitch value is right here. So you want to play a lot of red pitch cards in your deck, and we do have a lot of red pitch cards in this Dorinthea build. We have some blues and we have some yellows as well, but Ravenous Rebel is just a really good way to go wide. This is one of the cards that I often cut for more defensive cards if we want to go more defensive and put in some more higher resource cards, but still really good and definitely worth running. I typically start by playing with Ravenous Rebel. Similarly, we have Flock of the Featherwalkers. This is another 5 attack action with a cost of 1, defense of 2, and it says, as an additional cost to play Flock of the Featherwalkers, reveal a card in your hand with cost 1 or less. That's basically our whole deck. And it says, create a Quicken Aura token with, when you play an attack action card or attack with a weapon, destroy Quicken, then the attack gains Go Again. And we obviously have our Quicken Aura token, you know, right at the ready here. And so we run a full play set of these. This is a good way to give one of our future attacks Go Again, both an attack action or our Dawnblade, which is actually quite important. Once again, one of the cards that you could cut from the deck for more defensive options, but I do quite like Flock of the Featherwalkers. Now we're going to start talking about ways to pump up our weapon, kicking it off with Steelblade Supremacy. This is a Dorinthea specialization. It is a red pitch card with a cost of 1 and a defense of 3. And it says, until end of turn, target weapon gains +2, and whenever this weapon hits, draw a card. That is insane. Also, you know, Go Again. So this is fantastic. You definitely need a full playset of the Steelblade Supremacy in any Dorinthea deck. The fact that it gives this effect for the entire turn is insane. So if you can do this and then hit multiple times with your Dawnblade, you can get a ton of value out of this. So Steelblade Supremacy, not much else to say. It's just fantastic. It's really going to force your opponent to block more than they normally would. And you kind of can set up for that too if you can sandbag some attack reactions to pair with your Steelblade Supremacy. Next up, we have Iron Song Determination. This card is sweet. This is a really good way to punch through damage with Dorinthea. So this is a warrior action with a defense of 3, cost of 0, fantastic. Does have a yellow pitch, so you can kind of pitch this early game so you can use it in the late game when you will really want it. It says target weapon gains +1 and dominate until end of turn. So very similar to the Steelblade Supremacy. It is for the entire turn, not just, you know, for the next attack. It's for the whole turn. So this is a really good way to pump up your Dawnblade, give it that dominate, and then just kind of go to town and pound them down. Especially, once again, if you have ways to pump up your Dawnblade beyond, you know, what they can actually block with. So I'm running a full playset of Iron Song Determination. It is a very aggressive card. I've seen other builds only run 2. I like 3. Next up, we have a very simple card, Sharpen Steel. It's a warrior action. This is the red pitch version, cost of 0, defense of 3, and like I said, very simple. Your next weapon attack this turn gains +3, Go Again. So that is a +3 for a cost of 0. Fantastic. I run a full playset of just the red pitch version. I don't see any use of running the yellow or blue pitch. Just, you know, 0 cost, 3 damage is fantastic. The fact that it's an action isn't super great. It's not a reaction, but it's still just a really good way. Pump up your Dawnblade to a 6 or maybe even a 7 and kind of go to town. So yeah, really good. Next up is the Nature's Path Pilgrimage. Very similar to the Sharpened Steel, actually. So this one actually has a cost of 1. This is the red pitch version, defense of 3. Your next weapon attack this turn gains +3. And if it hits and you have no cards in your arsenal, reveal the top card of your deck. If it's an action card, and there's a very good chance it's going to be an action card, put it face down into your arsenal, Go Again. This is really good. It's almost like drawing a card, but you kind of like you get to tuck a card into the arsenal. It's just fantastic. Gives you some advantage. Pumps up your weapon by 3, which is a pretty good rate. +3 for 1 resource is probably like the going rate. The kind of the gold standard you want to hit with, unless the card has an exceptional other abilities. So yeah, we're running the full 3 Nature's Path Pilgrimage, the red versions. Next up, we have Spoils of War. This is a warrior action for a defense of 3, cost of 1, red pitch card. As you can see, a lot of red pitch cards in this deck. It says your next weapon attack this turn gains +2 and Go Again. So that's fantastic. Just immediately giving your next weapon attack Go Again is really good. It really offsets that +2, you know, where the Nature's Path and the Sharpened Steel have a +3. +2 and Go Again is just super good. And it also says whenever weapon you control hits this turn, create 2 copper tokens. And this is a copper token. It's just a generic token item. Action for 4 resources, destroy it and draw a card. Go Again. We don't really pop these off, but if you need to, then you can pop them off. We mostly use the Spoils of War for that +2 and Go Again. And then obviously itself has Go Again, so you can, you know, attack with your weapon, but this is a fantastic card. I'm only running 2 because I only have 2. I would very likely put another copy in and possibly cut something else. I'm not entirely sure, but Spoils of War is just really good. I also want to note that we are not using any other ways to capitalize with copper. We're not doing the cash in or whatever, but maybe in the future when we have more synergy with that kind of stuff, maybe these coppers can be useful. But currently, like I said, Spoils of War is just a +2 Go Again. Next up, we have another fantastic card that gives our Dawnblade Go Again with Hit and Run. This is a 0 cost card with 3 defense. We are running the blue pitch version of this, actually. It says your next weapon attack this turn gains Go Again. Really, really good for 0. It also says if you have attacked with a weapon this turn, your next attack this turn gains +1. So this is kind of a decent way to chain into multiple attacks. That second clause right here really doesn't come into play, which is why I am using the blue pitch version. The red pitch version is a +3, the yellow is a +2, but we really only need this for that Go Again, and then also to use as resources. So I really like the blue pitch specifically version of Hit and Run. You could probably use the yellow too if you wanted to, but I really like the blue pitch version of this card. Next up is a Warriors Classic, the Warriors Valor. This is a 1 cost card, defensive 3. This is the red pitch version, and it says your next weapon attack this turn gains +3. So once again, the 1 resource for +3, pretty good going rate. And if this hits, the attack gains Go Again. So it's not quite as, immediate. Like you don't 100% gain that Go Again on your Dawnblade unless it hits, but we have some ways to make sure it hits. And then this itself also has Go Again. We are running the red, the yellow, which is a +2, and of course the blue, which is just a +1. It's obviously a little bit harder to land a hit with the blue pitch version, but just having it for the resources is just fantastic, and same is true for the yellow pitch version. Just being able to pump up a guaranteed pump on your weapon, I think elevates this card over Hit and Run, which just gives you a guaranteed Go Again. Just being able to pump up the damage is so good, and we have a bunch of other ways to gain Go Again as well, but this is a really good, solid, staple way to do so. Speaking of giving our weapon Go Again, once again, we have a lot of ways to do this. This is Glint the Quicksilver, the best way to give our weapon Go Again. This is a 0 cost card for 3 pitch value, defense of 3, and it just says target weapon attack gains Go Again. And this one is a warrior attack reaction, so it is not an action. So we can do this after we've already attacked if we really want to give our weapon Go Again. It also has Reprise. If the defending hero has defended with a card from their hand this chain link, draw a card. That's so good. That is super good. So you can, draw a card to get the resources to attack, a second time, or maybe even pump up your second attack. So yeah, Glint the Quicksilver, obvious include, and it's also really good in combination with the next card, which is Singing Steelblade. And from here on out, all of the cards are, for the most part, are going to be reactions, starting with that Glint the Quicksilver. So we have a lot of reactions in this deck. Singing Steelblade is a Dorinthea specialization, defensive 3. This is a yellow pitch card with a 1 resource cost, and it says target weapon attack gains +1, so that's okay. But it also has a reprise ability that is amazing. It says if the defending hero has defended with a card from their hand this chain link, you may search your deck for an attack reaction card, banish it face up, then shuffle your deck. You may play it this chain link. So that's so good. Getting a Glint the Quicksilver to give your weapon attack Go Again, and then also drawing a card. It's so good. And there's a bunch of other attack reactions that we have too that we haven't even talked about yet, especially some that cost 0. So it's just a 1 cost +4, which is also pretty good. And it's also just incredibly versatile. We can either use it to pump up our weapon, use it to give our weapon Go Again, use it to do some other maybe shenanigansy stuff that I'll talk about at the end. Yeah, just really good. Next up is a classic Razor Reflex. This is a red pitch 1 cost generic attack reaction for 2 defense, and it says choose one. Target sword or weapon attack gains +3. Pretty good. Give our Dawnblade +3. Or target attack action card with cost 1 or less gains +3, and if this hits, Go Again. So also really good with those attack actions that I showed you at the beginning. We can give our Enlightened Strike Go Again or something like that. So yeah, just a really good, solid, versatile card for this deck. We can either choose which one we want depending on the situation. So having the options is just really solid. Next up, we have Out for Blood. This is a 1 cost, 3 defense red pitch card that gives target weapon attack +3. Once again, you're seeing a little theme here. 1 cost +3. This one, once again, is a reaction. It says Reprise. If the defending hero is defended with a card from their hand this chain link, your next attack this turn gains +1. So really solid, being able to punch in through some damage and then making our next attack have more damage. If we got the resources, we can use our Braveforge bracers after our attack hits to give that one +1. So, the +1 from the Out for Blood from the next attack and the +1 from the Braveforge, turn your Dawnblade's 3 into a 5, which is, pretty good for just like one single card pumping an attack and then pumping a future attack. We are obviously running a full set of the red pitch Out for Blood. Card's great. The next attack reaction that I mainline in my Dorinthea deck is the Iron Song response. I'm actually running the full gambit of Iron Song response. What it is, it's a warrior attack reaction with a defensive 3. This is the red pitch version. All of them cost 0, and all of them have this reprise ability. And it says, if the defending hero has defended with a card from their hand this chain link, target weapon attack gains +3. So 0 cost +3 is just so good. Like that sharpened steel, 0 cost +3 is, you know, batting above the curve. Really, really good. Being able to just boom, +3 out of nowhere is just incredibly good. And if they didn't defend with a card from their hand, then they're going to be taking some damage anyway. So this is a good way to just punch through, you know, additional damage. So we are running the red. The yellow is the exact same, except it is a +2. And the blue is the exact same, except it is a +1. And I think the +1 is still worth running. Or you can just use this as a resource. Just 0 cost +1 is decent enough. Or just, you know, it's a good resource. This is definitely one of my favorite cards to go get with that Singing Steel Blade, just getting an additional +3 for 0. Just really sweet. And the last couple cards in the main deck that I run are some defense reactions. So this one is the Springboard Somersault. Just a really, really good one. 0 cost, yellow pitch, defense of 2, but if it's played from the arsenal, it gets a +2. So it's basically a 0 cost +4 if it is played from the arsenal. Just a really, really good defensive card. It's the only 0 cost 4 defense reaction that pitches for 2, and pitching for 2 is actually quite good. I haven't talked about this too much yet, but you definitely want several resources to, you know, have at your disposal for Dawnblade. Getting a yellow or a blue pitch is really, really good because you're able to spend one of those resources on some sort of pumping card to pump up your Dawnblade, and the other one to actually attack with your Dawnblade. So getting just a single yellow card or a single blue pitch card can go a long way in the Dorinthea deck. So yeah, Springboard Somersault, really, really good for both pitch and defense. And then of course I am also running Sink Below. Once again, 0 cost, 4 defense. This is the red pitch version. It says, you may put a card from your hand on the bottom of your deck. If you do, draw a card. Just so good. You can basically mulligan a card from your hand onto the bottom of your deck. So you can either save that card for a later turn, or just mulligan something that's useless right now to the bottom and, you know, hopefully draw something better. Obviously running a full set of the red pitch Sink Below. I put this in basically every single deck. So yeah, it's just really, really good. So this was the main deck that I like to run for the most part. But once again, this is Flesh and Blood, and we have an 80 card pool to choose from when we choose what cards we're going to use for a match. So these are the other 15 cards, actually maybe 14 cards, because I think this is 61 that I typically run. 14 cards in what I would call like a sideboard or kind of thing. It's not really a sideboard, but you know. This is the Null Rune Robe, just a really good card to have against certain matchups, in particular Kano and Viserai. So if we're playing against those decks, we want to put the Null Rune Robe in there just so we can have that, you know, guaranteed arcane barrier. We also have Scar for a Scar. This is a card that I like to put in against decks that are really aggressive, so decks that we know they're going to deal damage to us, so we can actually get this ability from Scar for a Scar. Because what it does, it's a 0 cost card, 2 defense, 4 attack, and it says when you play Scar for a Scar, if you have less health than your opponent, it gains Go Again. So I like to swap this out, maybe for Ravenous Rabble, maybe in addition to Ravenous Rabble and other stuff if we want to be really, really aggressive, or against other aggressive decks, because we know we're going to be able to get that Go Again. I also run Remembrance. This is just a really, really good card for grindy matchups. If your opponent is playing with a deck that you think is going to go really, really long, you can put your Remembrance in here. It's just an instant, and you get to shuffle 3 cards from your graveyard back into your deck, so you can kind of get that, you know, longevity there, so you can kind of keep going. Just a really, really solid card in general. But I don't typically mainline this card. I'll just put it in if I'm like, oh, my opponent's playing Guardian. Put it in my Remembrance or something like that. Similarly, we have Sigil of Solace. Just a really, really good defensive card, 0 cost, instant, gain 3 health, just a really, really good way to gain some health back, and it's not matchup dependent. You can kind of put this against any matchup that you think is going to, you know, you're going to need that extra health, either if you're going to go long or you think they're going to be super aggressive. Good in both, you know, both of those. It's also really, really good in your opening hand because, you know, you get a draw up at the end of your turn. So yeah, Sigil of Solace is just a really good card. And then finally, we have some Steelblade Shunts. A really good defensive card, especially against decks that like to attack with their weapons a lot. So I like to side this in, or put this in against a lot of really, basically decks that really, really want to swing with their weapon. And that's a good number of them, especially big weapon attacks. So Brute, Guardian, that kind of stuff. So what it is, it's a defense reaction with a base defense of 6 for the red pitch version, costs 1. If it defends against a weapon, deal 1 damage to the attacking hero. Really, really good. You can put this in against non-weapon, you know, attacking decks, but I still think it's really good against those kind of decks. So I do have the red pitch version here, and I also run 2 of the yellow pitch version, just in case. And the final card I want to talk about that's not technically in the 80 cards is Twinning Blade. It's a very interesting card, but I have yet to get it to work very well because you need an absurd amount of resources to get this to work. So it costs 0, defense of 3. It's a yellow pitch card, which is actually pretty good. And it says you may attack an additional time with target sword this turn. You must have an action point to attack an additional time. So just a really good way to attack a 3rd time with our Dawnblade. But just to attack 3 times with Dawnblade, we need at least 3 resources and Twinning Blade, and maybe some way to pump it up. So it could be really, really good if we have Steel Blade Supremacy or something like that. You know, an ability that gives our Dawnblade a plus for the entire turn. That way you can get some really, really good advantage over Twinning Blade. And also, in particular, the Courage of Bladehold is quite good with Twinning Blade because it just reduces the cost of all of our sword attacks by 1 for the whole turn. So basically, it's just free to attack with Dawnblade. So Twinning Blade, it's pretty good. You can kind of do some shenanigans here. It's one of the cards that I'm testing out more often, and I don't think it's a full 3 of. I think I'd probably just play 2 of it, but it could be a good option. It just feels a little bit win more to me because you just need a lot of cards in your hand to get it to go off. And if you already have a lot of cards in your hand, then your turn's probably going to be really good anyway. But I don't know. I'm kind of torn on Twinning Blade. I think it's really cool, but yeah, we'll see what I do with this. And that'll about do it for this Dorinthea Iron Song deck tech. Like I said, this is one of my absolute favorite decks. If I went to a competitive event right now, I'd probably bring this deck, or at least some variation of this deck. You know, I might be running the Twinning Blades. I might not. I might, you know, do some other, you know, minor swap ups with the deck. But this is like my core Dorinthea deck right now. I really like this deck. I've gotten a lot better at piloting this deck over time. I think it's easier to pilot than a lot of other decks, especially if you come from Magic the Gathering and you're used to just being very aggressive and attacking. Dorinthea can play very, very aggressively. She can also play very defensively, which makes her such a sweet hero. Most heroes can do that, by the way. Most heroes can play both defensively and aggressively, but she's just really good at being aggressive, especially with Dawnblade being just a fantastic weapon. Such a sweet weapon. So if you liked the video, then leave a like, comment, subscribe, maybe share this with your friends, especially if you think they would like Flesh and Blood. Regardless of what you do, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time for some more Flesh and Blood content. We'll see you later.